Hello, everybody, or at least lots of people are talking about storytelling, the importance of storytelling, how that we should use storytelling. But do we really know what storytelling is? Do we really know how to do it? Do you really know how to use it? So today it's the day to talk about it with Daniel. Stay tuned because I'll be back right in a second. Hello, Marco Novo here, and today we're gonna talk about storytelling with Daniel. I left Daniel in the basement. He's there with a glass of water and a cookie. Thankfully, my the other guest I had last week, he didn't hate the cookie, so he left the cookie to Daniel. And welcome to my show. Today we're going to talk about storytelling. If you know someone who may be interested in this topic, please tag him on comments so he can come to the conversation. You can tell us where you are and on which platform you are talking. Hello, Alberto. ¿Cómo estás? Un saludo. And please let us know, okay? Let us know where you are. You can leave some suggestions of content. Bring someone to the conversation. If you are watching the replay, please hashtag replay and drop your questions also. Tag Daniel if you want him to answer to your particular question, okay? And stay tuned. And you can also share the live. Let us know where you are and hello. Okay, is with an echo. Let me see what could be happening here. Okay. Hello, Finland. How are you? Let me know if now the sound is okay. And now, hello. Minto. Continua o eco. Vamos cá ver se eu consigo resolver o problema do eco. Okay. Oh, let's go. I think we can. Okay, it's okay. Thank you. So let's bring Daniel to the conversation. Hello. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, we have this video here. I don't know what's happening with him. He wants to join the conversation. I don't know why. Okay, but things that may happen when you are live. Okay, I don't know what's happening. It's a kind of a bug. Okay, we'll have this special guest this time. I don't know what happened. It's a special guest who doesn't want to leave the screen, but it's okay. So
you can put a shared screen up there.
Thank you, Daniel, for being here.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I will try to fix the problem with my voice in a while. Daniel, thank you so much for being here to talk about this so important topic by these days, which is storytelling. And I would love that you may introduce yourself and then we can go into the conversation. Is that okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so my name is Daniel Alegi, Danny also. I'm from the US, but I was raised in Italy, and I'm currently living in Sweden. So I have a little bit of a triangular look at storytelling globally, but I also have experience working with films in Los Angeles, in Italy, in Europe. But I also had an earlier background in tech marketing. So it's a soup that I'm in.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let me change this layout. Oh my God, I don't know what's happening with this situation. Hello, everybody. Hola, Fernando. Hola, Karina. Hola, Alberto. Encantado. Hello, Philip. Well, my friend, and the answer the question for $1 million is, after all, what is storytelling? Is this the same as story, just telling the story? Or is there any difference? What can we say that storytelling is?
Okay, I'm gonna try not to draw on my background as a university teacher as well, and give you the simplest answer that works for me, and that is that story and storytelling are not the same thing. Storytelling is much bigger than story. Story, for example, begins and ends, as you know, whereas storytelling never ends. It's in fact quite hard to figure out the beginning of storytelling and the end of storytelling. You could say storytelling is the middle of every story. Another thing I can say from my long experience here is that you don't really have to be a writer to understand storytelling. And I think a lot of people who listen to people talking about story and storytelling, gurus and master classes and everything, they worry, will I be good enough as a writer in order to make a story? Well, my point and my work these days as a consultant to authors and filmmakers and businesses is in fact the opposite. You can write without writing. You can understand storytelling without being a writer. It's just a bigger world. And I think it's actually more fun to explore than simply the journey of a character towards a goal.
Okay, let me see. Okay, it remains there. He wants to stay with us. I don't know why.
That is the dark side.
Yeah, the dark side of the moon. Okay, so is everybody a storyteller? Is just because I'm telling a story, does it mean I'm a storyteller?
Yeah, well, it's funny because about 20 years ago, there was a billboard, an ad by Sony, I believe, that said everybody's a director because cameras had become digital and easy to get, and so everybody was a director. And I guess these days everybody is a storyteller in the sense that storytelling is the global mega trend. In other words, there is no business, no person, no brand, no online presence that can ignore both the global storytelling and their personal storytelling. So the mix between the story you tell about yourself from the inside out and the story that in a way you receive from the outside in, the meeting of the local and the global, is really the place where the storytelling happens. It's really the now that we are experiencing in the world these days. And it's full of conflict, as story always is. So if you want just a yes-no answer, the answer is everybody is a storyteller simply because storytelling is what we do to communicate to others. Okay, so if I'm a little monkey and I'm leading a pack of monkeys in the jungle of Africa and I see a bunch of lions under a tree, I will signal to my family to go around the other way, right? That is nothing but storytelling. The story that yell and that finger is saying is, that way is life, this way is death.
It's interesting because I know this mindset because it's good to use the mindset word everywhere. Anytime. So one of the things we should use storytelling is because we want to make people to do something, right? So the monkey wants people to avoid that tree with the lions underneath, and that's why it's a good way to use storytelling, right?
Yeah. Because storytelling, and story, of course, have in common the fact that they develop through choices. So characters and people, and I'll explain to you in a second why I consider them to be different things, characters and people, but they develop through choices. In other words, a choice that a person makes leads to a set of other choices, right? And denies others, right? Borges famously wrote about the labyrinth of opportunities, of lost opportunities, so that everything you choose is giving up many other choices, right? So clearly, action is a physicalization of choice, right? There's a psychological aspect, what I think I want to do, and then there's actually what I can do or what I manage to do against the reality, right? So the moment that you take a thought towards a goal, you have to deal with the fact that in between there is life as we know it. Gravity, conflict in every physical form will oppose what you're trying to do. So the monkey was saying that as well.
So is there when the story starts?
Well, okay, so every time I run a workshop, right, there's always this issue, where does the story start? And clearly there is several starts to a story. For example, there is, the first image in a film is not really where the story starts. That's just the first image that is cut to begin the film. That's the image that works best to open the movie. But the story starts somewhere else. So that the beginning of the story is not always the first thing you tell in whatever media you're using. So whether you're telling a story with words at a wedding, say, for example, you're invited to a wedding and, your drunk uncle gets on the table and says, hey, it's your turn to tell a joke, right? And you have to kind of stumble on the table. Back in the day when weddings were legal, right? And then you have to tell this joke and you have to figure out which joke is going to work for this crowd. And you have to decide, how are you going to tell it? And can you tell that dirty joke, or maybe it's best not to? And then you decide, maybe I don't have enough time, I'll cut it short. So maybe you tell a different beginning than the normal one. So you can always adjust beginning and end, but there is a place creatively where we decide, where does my story come from? That's a different place than where the story actually begins on a screen or in a video or a PowerPoint or any kind of presentation. The actual creative beginning of the story isn't necessarily the beginning of the story.
That's amazing because, okay, okay.
I mean, I can tell you now that the dark side is up again. I can perhaps just go a little bit further to talk about, where do stories begin?
Okay, that's
a lot of people are interested in the creative process, whether or not they are storytellers or they work in any other area. People wonder, is story some kind of, burst of talent? That some people are storytellers and so they have these wild imaginations and they come up with ideas and they just sort of flow with stories like they were, Dostoevsky or Dickens, just kind of words just flow out in final form. But in reality, I personally think, in my way of working, you can start the story pretty much anywhere. And I don't mean it as a banality to avoid the question. I simply mean that anywhere that you have a moment that you see clearly, that you are visualizing clearly something that happens, like a gesture, you're thinking about someone doing something, right? Especially if in that moment that you visualize, someone is asking for help. So the word help with the exclamation mark, like in the Beatles album, just to show how old I am. Any moment in which anybody is asking for help or needing help is the anywhere that I think stories should begin from. Whether or not the actual asking of help is at the beginning or at the end or in the middle, but that is the core point when someone reveals that they are vulnerable and that they need somebody's help. And this can also be indirect, of course, because not everybody has the luxury to ask for help. Sometimes it's when they need it the most, when they can't say it. But if you look in your imagination, that place where you go looking for your memories and your dreams and where everything's kind of mixed up together, my company is called Cinema Head, so I do use these sort of metaphors about the brain and where we keep our memories. But go looking for moments where somebody needs help, whether it's a customer, a company, a character, or a whole crew of characters. I'm sure you will find there the initiative of a story that will start to develop.
Okay, that's good because. Okay, let me see. Oh, it's still there. The black hole. Hope it doesn't swallow us. That's important. This situation and the other point is that today, story is like love. It's all around, and we have these stories on Facebook, on Instagram. We have this TikTok. Soon, LinkedIn will be releasing also stories. Mm-hmm. On YouTube, we have also kind of story format. What do you think about it? How can we use it on our behalf to tell our own story?
Yeah, I think, as I said, it's a mega trend, right? So story is a kind of passepartout, those keys that open all the hotel rooms, right? It opens everything. If you say story, these days you always attract attention, and sometimes it's used in ways that are a little bit, liberal. Like, for example, adding a couple of photographs in a sequence, passes as a story, which is fine, right? But I do think that this is a time for people to actually teach themselves a little bit, to become story literate, right? So, for example, to understand a little bit of the basics of stories so that not only can you make a story, both a personal story or, become a communicator that understands the principles of storytelling, that is necessary, but also to be story literate means to understand the stories that are told to you, because sometimes it's very difficult to make sense of all the different storylines that exist, in the media, over the internet, and we're all basically carrying in our pockets these radio antenna that take in stories that are formatted, made for us. But there's also a world of organic storytelling, person-to-person storytelling. I think becoming story literate is a necessary step for everyone, because we're going to be living in a data world in which newspapers will write themselves pretty soon. And I think we need to be able to add some humanity to storytelling, or to preserve some humanity. So that we actually understand how stories are told and how we wish for stories to be told, understanding a little bit of drama, perhaps. I often use drama working with businesses to understand, for example, who the hero is in a certain relationship. Because storytelling ultimately is about relationships. Relationships that start well and end badly, or start badly and have a chance of going well, but then drop. And then there is, again, this interesting middle to develop. But not everybody's interested in story development. Not everybody wants to be a writer of scenes and events and complications. People just want to know how things end. And so, we can also talk about endings of story and how those work.
Okay, let's do it. If you want to dig on that, we can go.
I'm also happy if people have questions to ask. I'd be happy to answer. Uh, Basically, endings are, to me, the real beginning of stories. So basically, again, if you're going to tell a joke in public, or you're going to tell a story to somebody sitting, in a train across from you, you should know how the story ends. Because if you don't know how the story ends, you don't know if that's the right story to tell. Right? So if you already know a story, for example, knowing the end well is very helpful.
now? Is it working? Let me know if now it's working, please. Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Okay. Thank you. I think we fixed the problem. Let's wait for Daniel. I'm so sorry. Sometimes this situation happen. It's live being live. Thank you for staying there and to giving your feedback. Really good. Let's see if Daniel will arrive. Let me see if it's working and if Daniel comes. Meanwhile, you can drop some questions. You can bring some other people to to the live if you think that's interesting for them. Okay, not on LinkedIn. Okay. Let me check on LinkedIn. Okay.
I'm back.
Okay, Daniel. Well, we have this situation. Let's
Make the best of it.
let's talk with the people. Okay, there's no sound on there's nothing on LinkedIn. I think there's some issue also with the sound. Maybe I think it's better to reschedule the conversation and overcome these technical issues.
The story production.
Yeah, well, that's how it is.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna talk with Daniel in the backstages, and then I will come up with another day to make this conversation. Okay, and yeah, Daniel.
No, I'm saying I'd be happy to answer people if you have questions that you had lined up that I wasn't able to answer. I'd be happy to take them off the chat and reply.
Yeah, they are there on the comments of the video,
Yeah.
so we can pick them and bring it to another conversation,
Right.
because we are facing so many technical issues. I think. Okay, someone is asking for us to keep the conversation. So I'm gonna stop by the Alberto's question.
Yep.
He made about.
I think I read Alberto's response, which was about companies needing to learn to make the customers the heroes of the story.
Absolutely, yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, and this is really the essence of storytelling, is to create an environment, a story environment within which to allow customers, characters, heroes, people to then go on a journey of discovery, right? So you create an environment and you allow others to experience it, not exactly the way you want it to, but according to your rules and principles. So that is a very good suggestion for companies to follow. In other words, not the company as the hero, me, look at me, but using the experience of users and customers as an example of story.
Okay, I think it's working now on LinkedIn again, thankfully. Okay, so let's keep the conversation.
Oh, good.
Okay, I have this question from Halon. He was talking to Alberto. There is a whole psychology around this, but in essence, you are right. Good storytelling should invoke feelings and emotions upon the listener and not the storyteller. I recommend you use the listener and the hero of the story and not yourself.
Right. That's what I just answered. I absolutely agree. The hero of the story is the customer, is the user. It's not the company. It's not the maker.
Absolutely. It's kind of, there is this Star Wars paradigm about Yoda. Yoda doesn't want to shine himself. He wants to make the others shine, right?
Right. Because the most fascinating character for me in all the archetypes of story, the archetypes being, the hero, the antagonist, the lover, the shadow, the shapeshifter, the mentor. The mentor is, Merlin or Yoda or Rocky Balboa's coach, right? It's the one who helps the hero get to a level of knowledge or know-how to be able to then go and confront the major problems. So in a way, companies mentor their customers through onboarding and customer service as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to make an update to people who are watching us, mostly on LinkedIn, because I lost the feed of comments here on the Restream Studio. So I have to follow up on LinkedIn itself. I couldn't show the comments on screen, as for instance on Facebook or YouTube, but I will follow the comments, okay? So now we have this comment from Mintu. Should you stick with the ending you come up with in the first place or change it so that it feels right?
Hey, Minto. Well, I think that's a little bit of the issue that most film students face, is to modify the possible endings as they go. So I think a good metaphor for that is, for example, if you want to use a slack rope from one side of a canyon to another, you're going to have to secure that slack rope on both sides if you're going to walk on it. You can't start walking on a rope that isn't secured on the other side, right? So basically, you cannot walk on a slack rope that is soft. And the only way to create the tension on that rope is to secure the beginning and the end. So you might modify some elements of the ending, but you always have to keep an ending in mind. You might realize that before the ending, you might have a great crisis. And that's fairly common in most drama, that before the release and the reward, you risk your life. But the stronger your awareness of the ending that you want, and the better your personal journey as a writer will be. A suggestion on that is if you don't aim for a specific thing, in other words, don't think of the ending as like a specific spot to throw your dart to, but think of it in wide terms, like the horizon. If you're sitting by the horizon, everybody on the beach can wish to reach the horizon, and it's a non-competitive kind of moment. So if you keep your ending a little bit wider, you don't have to change it all the time.
Okay, perfect. Let me see if we have the whole questions answered here on LinkedIn. We have this. Okay, I think it's all done by here. Okay, so if you are watching, and please keep dropping your questions. And about the language we should use on our storytelling, Daniel.
Yeah. Well, I guess storytelling is a language, in a way, right? In other words, there's certain principles, there's certain ways about storytelling that are what I was mentioning before, the story literacy. In other words, if you're going to speak story, you should understand the grammar of story. You should understand the rules. Just like if you want to learn to speak a language, you have to understand a little bit if that's a language that's going to have the verb at the end of the sentence or at the beginning of the sentence, if it's going to be a language written in an alphabet that you know or not, right? So storytelling has the same requirements. It's a very free environment, right? But it then gets a little bit more interesting when you're developing actual characters, multi-dimensional characters that have interior problems, social problems, universal problems, time problems. So it's like getting a driver's license. If you're going to be driving a taxi or a bus or even just your electric car, not a bad idea to have a license to drive. So if you get a license to storytell, then you can continue with that.
Okay. And okay, we have the principles, we have this our end situation, and now we have to think about the other end, which is our public, our audience. What do you have to say about it? Because it's truly important to have in mind the audience, as we mentioned before.
Right. Well, different kinds of storytelling have different relationships with audiences. Say that you're a teacher and you're talking about history, and you want to make sure that all the students understand, what Alexander the Great did in order to change the taxation system in the Middle East. Well, you're going to be in an explanation mode. In other words, you want the audience to understand things exactly as they are. So we're talking about facts. If you're in the world of drama, for example, what you want to deliver to the audience is emotion. And you might be able to generate emotion from things that are not necessarily factual or historically correct. If you want to generate a sale, for example, you want to generate attraction, then your storytelling will try to generate beliefs and loyalty. So depending on your audience, your storytelling will have a different approach. But always you have to have the audience as the other side of the coin. You cannot write a story or create a story or develop a storytelling campaign based on only one side of the coin. You have to flip it to the other side, to the audience, and then back all the time. You have to look at both sides. It's a little bit like a yin-yang image, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which, because I know that okay, and I think that there's this situation. Nice bottle, by the way. There's this how can I say, this lack of connection mindset with the audience, because I see and you see for sure mostly on the about us on a website, for instance, and it's I think this could, first of all, this should change. It's not about us, it's about you. How can I help you? But we see so many about us, we, us, me, us. That's a huge problem. And I think that, for instance, that doesn't engage with someone who's reading, because I'm always reading about you and not about me. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's very complex, because one thing also we tend to do is to make things being complex so we look smart and people, okay? What do you have to say about this when we are thinking about storytelling?
You mean about trying to look smart?
No, about what we should do instead of being complex, about speaking all the time on the first person.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there is a growing world of the personal story. So the personal story is, something, it's very important to me. I think it's important to everybody who's ever kept a diary or a journal. Anybody who is right now working with creating a CV or developing an online presence, we are trained to favor and foreground the me side. Me, what I want, what I desire, what I wish for, what I can do, where I want to go. It's a little bit, in a way, part also of our general culture, I should say, that in a way has taken objectivity, the way things are, and put that in the second place, and replaced it with a kind of modernist and postmodernist idea that the only thing that matters is the subjective self. It's the way I see the world. If I see the world with square heads, or if I think a toilet is art, or if I think that throwing paint on a canvas is art, well, that is the magic of wonderful art of the 20th century. I'm talking about Picasso, I'm talking about Duchamp, I'm talking about abstract art, Kandinsky, right? But there also is objectivity, the way things are. We just don't seem to agree so much anymore as to the fact that things are the same for everybody. So we are all really interested in being different. It's all about me, I'm different, I'm a variation on a theme. And as an old cartoon book that I loved when I was a kid, everybody wants to be different, and that's what we all have in common.
Absolutely.
So in terms of personal story, the me, I aspect is kind of hard to avoid in a way. But as Alberto said before, the real trick is to listen for those crying for help. And I'm not only talking about migrants or people in pain or people suffering. Help in any kind of situation. That's where story lives, is where somebody is trying to get themselves out of trouble.
Absolutely.
Right? So there is no story without listening. If your customer is using something, your product or your app, right? I just made an app, so I know what it means to have people calling and saying, hey, but your app crashes right away. That's where you begin to listen. You begin to welcome somebody into a process, a relationship. You begin storytelling.
Absolutely. Well, we have another question. It was made before the
Crash.
the live hackathon,
Yeah.
and it was by Mintu. What if you know how the story ends, but writing the middle it starts to feel cliche?
Because see, here we're talking about dramatic writing. We're talking about writing fiction. And I think that cliches are an interesting part of storytelling, because everything around us is cliche. If I say IKEA, you know what I mean, right? If I say sunset, hashtag, there's 100 million pictures at least, right? So it's easy to be attracted to the sameness of things. We all are trained now to put our thumb up and say, I like, I like, I like. That is a cliche as well, right? To simply accept things on the surface, a picture, a line, something that we know little of the substance of. So sometimes cliches, can be interesting if you take a variation of the cliche and develop that. So that we can talk about in one of our next episodes when we talk more about story development. But I think, Mintu, you're sharing the pain of being in the middle of a story, because the middle is where everything happens, where the development happens. And so I basically suggest for now that wherever you are, look forward to the next moment and look back to the previous moment and see if your story has tension or if it's gotten soft, if you're just adding elements to a flat sequence. And then let me know how it goes.
Good. Well, we have this comment from Linda. Hello, Linda. Good to see you here. Everyone wants to be different, and that's what we all have in common. Good one.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think it's true. I think we all think that we're so different from others, and in reality, there is someone else's lens looking at us as just masses of millions of people that have pretty predictable behaviors, and our data can pretty much uh, provide insight into what our value is for companies. I personally don't see it that way, and I think that our difference can be expressed in story, in art, in work, and also by example. I really believe in story by example. Do what it is you do as a doer, as a maker, and then nobody will be able to misunderstand your story if they watch you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, me too. Is thanking you. And what about understanding stories? Because there's this importance.
Yeah. No, well, this goes again to the global side of story, understanding story. Am I understanding what you're telling me, right? In other words, in order for me to begin to feel safe within somebody else's storytelling, I need to trust it, right? I always use the example of Hitchcock. You always trust a Hitchcock movie that in the end it's going to deliver enough juicy, scary emotions because it's Hitchcock. Because you've learned to trust that filmmaker, to deliver that kind of emotion. And sometimes one has that kind of experience with politicians or with celebrities, that you come to expect from them a certain consistency in their storytelling that you trust. But it's not as easy to do when you are facing a stranger, for example, right? There's a great Malcolm Gladwell book out now called Talking to Strangers that pretty clearly shows how many cases have been wrongly prosecuted because someone misunderstood how a person looked or spoke, even though under the surface there was a completely different personality. So to understand, to listen, means to have the guts, the time, the will to go under the surface of somebody else, especially if you don't know them, to try to see really where they're coming from and not rest on the cliche of what they look like. Oh, he looks like a scary punk. He must be dangerous, right? Uh, someone told me a story which may be funny, maybe not. Maybe it's this is what I was saying before about telling these wedding jokes, right? But someone I know who is over 50, over like my age, who basically was driving a car and he saw a girl and he slowed down the car to take a closer look. This is a typical sort of Mediterranean thing. Harm. It's just, and then when he drove by, he realized it was his daughter. And there's a weirdness there. There's something there because, appearance, cliche, surface can lead to a lot of misunderstandings.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
This is an offbeat example. I often use in my work examples from daily life to lead the way into talking about storytelling, because I think there's many books out there about story, about narrative, about drama, about scenes, written by gurus and other professors. And I have read many of them and I respect them all. But I think that storytelling gets better for people when it becomes a local dialect, something you can understand and debate using examples from daily life, because it requires less time and less effort. I don't have to teach you, the tragic comedies of Euripides or Greek drama for you to understand the pain of a man who's suffering because he killed his father. We can talk about that using common language, right? You can understand the principles of drama even without having studied drama or being a writer, is what I mean.
absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah. And after all, what is the aim of a storytelling? What does he want to achieve? What is the goal we should have in mind?
Well, I think as you were saying at the beginning, the storytelling is the language of humans. Right? We as humans we have this gift. We can create words. We can articulate emotions with words. You know, perhaps animals used to do that too before they swallowed computers and became mute. I don't know, right? But certainly we have the possibility to articulate, to tell about our experiences, or to imagine experiences. So we can, you know, with storytelling, we open the space of time. We can tell stories about the future. We can imagine. We can go into the what if, why not, what next, you know, science fiction, go in the future. Or we can go in the past. We can look at what happened, our history, learn from our mistakes, understand civilization, tell those stories. Or we can go into the story of the moment, right now. In the middle of our lives, what is our destination? What are we thinking about? Regardless of religion and color and country, you know, what are we as human beings? What are we moving towards and what are we coming from? And in that tension in between, in that juicy, rich now, which is every moment of your life, what are you doing in terms of thought and action? How are you transforming from an idea into something physical? And when you do that, you find yourself trying to do something. You're trying to do something, whatever your objective is. And as you try, you will probably fail or find some difficulty, right? If your idea is jump and you jump, you're going to have to deal with gravity and distance and your shoes and, you know, danger. So the minute that you try to do something, to go from being a thinker to a doer, you're going to encounter the world, resistance, gravity, tension, friction. You're going to encounter conflict, the buzzword of all movie scripts and screenplays, right? Just add more conflict. There's no need to add any conflict because it's all around you. It's you encountering the space around you, which in an Oriental sense is also you, you know, but it also belongs to others too. It's kind of funky that way, that, you know, there is a common space that belongs to everybody and it contains everybody's actions and memories and things. So storytelling is, if you start to use it in different media, really a way to explore a lot of what you might have thought belonged in a book or in an old exam you took in high school or in an old passion you abandoned, like playing the piano or an instrument. Everything you did and you put it away in a box safely in the stories of the past, you might re-encounter, you know, especially in these funky times of loneliness, as you rewrite your future moment by moment.
Absolutely.
Am I scaring you with these?
No, no, I'm processing all the information because it's really important to understand this framing. And by the way, and I think it's also,
That's a good word.
yeah, yeah, and that's it, because I'm always, and that's one of my biggest struggles every day, and my journey. It's kind of
Yeah.
framing the best way to frame my work,
Yeah.
to get the most by doing the less. Do you have any tools that you can suggest for us if you want to become good storytellers?
Yeah. Well, um, you know, I think I've developed over the years for my work a story kit in a way that basically includes what I think are, the storytelling version of a Swiss Army knife. Okay, so if you go camping, you bring a Swiss Army knife because it has the basics. You can open a can, you can cut a stick. There's a little magnifying lens, a toothpick. The basics for camping out. And maybe because when I was a kid, I was a Boy Scout, but I always thought that story is a kind of an adventure in that way. That's one of the metaphors that works. Building is another metaphor. Building bridges, for example, getting across canyons and holes. But in my story kit, for example, one very important thing is time. It's kind of a non-digital sand clock. Basically, storytelling does not exist without time because it happens over time, right? I mean, you can go and look at the Van Gogh painting in Amsterdam for a couple of hours if there's nobody there, which probably there isn't right now. So you can explore static art at your own speed. But if you're watching a movie, for example, you're at the speed of the movie, and if you're creating a story, it makes a lot of difference if it doesn't matter if it happens today or tomorrow or if something is urgent. It's a big difference, right? If you're sitting on the couch and nothing happens, try setting the couch on fire. See if your character moves, right? So time is definitely an element that's important. Another element that I use in story, and I visualize story in story maps, and I'll show you this in our next events, some story mapping. Another element is distance. So in my story kit, there's a measurement kit because I'm interested in the physicality of the characters, their size, and also their distance from somebody else. If I decide to swing a samurai sword around me, am I going to hit anybody? It's important to know how much space there is between people, physically, spiritually, psychologically. Loneliness and socialization are fundamental in storytelling. Right. Another element that's very important in my story kit is a magnifying glass, a lens that allows me to look at something under a microscope as big as I need to see the legs of a butterfly. Do butterflies have legs?
I think they have.
To. Yeah. they transform, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you can then, take that lens and turn it the other way and maybe use it to start a fire or to look at wider spaces. So you need to have in your story kit the ability to measure time, to measure distance, to focus. Because as you said before, the storyteller needs to frame the story. That's job one. How much of the world will be in our storytelling? If I'm selling a pair of shoes, how much story do I need to tell before I can get to the shoes? I once made an Adidas commercial in the States, which is actually on my website. But how much story do you need to tell before you can get to your point of revelation, of reveal, before you give a reward? Before I said the teacher has to explain. So the teacher explains everything flat. I just tell you the story. But the storyteller in drama does not explain. Hides the truth in the story, reveals the truth at the right time. So you have reveal is a tool in the story kit of the dramatic storyteller. Explanation is in the teacher's story kit. Engagement is in the story kit of the business content provider, business storyteller. So the framing is important, just to close on the framing, because you can frame a world too big. If you frame the whole universe for your story, it's hard for you to focus on your actual story.
Absolutely.
If you frame it too small, it's hard to have any context. So you have to have a dynamic frame, something that can go smaller and bigger. And that's something I do in my training and coaching, is helping people understand how to be dynamic with their story framing.
That's good. And it comes to another situation that it happens often, where we get stopped and we get blocked. I don't know. Okay, I came to here. I'm on this square. I look around and I don't see which street I should pick, or there's no streets at all. How can we overcome this, Daniel?
Are you talking about like individual writer's block?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think writer's block only happens to people that are writing fiction. In other words, if you're writing, business writing, you're probably in a team. If you're writing a journal, it probably doesn't matter. If you don't feel like writing, you stop. Writer's block seems to be something that happens to people writing fiction when they run into a point where they can't really develop the story further. And yeah, I think just to stay on the simple here for this talk, I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. One way is, as I said, to know the rest of the story, to know how the story ends, so that even if you're in the middle of a scene that you're thinking, this doesn't do anything, it doesn't mean anything, this is not really what I want to talk about, maybe that's an opportunity for you to take that scene and then create another scene, which might juxtapose, might be in conflict, so that you might zigzag your way forward as long as you know pretty much where you're going. So you don't have to be paranoid that you have a dead end, because if you hit a dead end, just bounce back and write that too. So you write trying to go forward and trying to rebound, and then you have two scenes instead of one. So writer's block often can generate recyclable material, which I find to be very fresh for stories, to be part of a process. That's not only the perfect scenes, but also including using scenes that made you go off track a little bit. So in terms of that, and another thing is just about, where people write. People have different styles. Some people here, where I work, there's someone here who writes on a walking machine, one of these step machines. So typing while they walk, because the walking sort of gets the juices flowing. I personally do an audio show that you also find if you go hunting in my personal pages. That's called Walk with Danny. I just walk and I talk as I walk, and I just post those conversations. So I think sometimes you might want to try writing in different formats. The first year I lived in Los Angeles, that's maybe 25 years ago, I used to teach at a university that was 60 miles out of LA in Valencia, and I used to dictate screenplay basically into my answering machine at home. I would call my phone and talk my script into an answering machine. Then I would go home, take the cassette from the answering machine, put it on the Via Voice IBM sound reader, and have it typed out. So you can come up with your own crazy system for writing when you feel like writing, and not have to suffer through, massive blockage. And then finally, of course, if you can distract the logic side of your brain by doing any kind of physical activity, running, walking, biking, driving, and trap your logical side into some mechanical task, then your creative side might be unlocked and free to escape the prison.
Okay. Nice. And it happens often to me. Sometimes I'm thinking about something, the ideas don't come, and then I go do something else, and something pop up. That
Yeah, yeah.
eureka moment. Well, we have another question from Mintu. Talking about fiction writing, how much do you need to develop your character before you start writing, or do you need to develop a character before writing a story?
Well, as I said, I think you can start a story anywhere, right? From an event, from a character, for something. Uh, in my experience, uh, the closest a character looks or feels to somebody that you actually know, and the easier it is to write it. So if I'm thinking of a character, I immediately think like, who does this look like of the people that I know? And that helps me develop that character without being constantly fishing for gestures and attitudes and imagining everything. So in fiction, I think if you have a character in mind, see if that character feels like somebody you know, and try to use some of those characteristics to give the character some flesh. Of course, it goes without saying that characters are not people. I mean, they don't exist. So you basically create them because the story needs a character. So just beware that characters will never be like people fully. They will just do what the story needs them to do. So don't expect too much of characters.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if you were still there.
Yeah, I am. Here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. By the way, me too talked about this, about developing. It's good to maybe to talk a little bit about the developing and the storytelling process.
Mm.
Okay, because there are so many things to character, persona, person, potential of conflict. What do you have to?
Right. Well, for example, in marketing, most people that are over 30 have been trained in marketing to think about persona as a kind of imaginary customer. So a persona means I imagine my customers to be, a 50-year-old, a very busy man who likes this kind of movies, or a teenager who plays a lot of sports. Creating these persona, meaning types of characters, right? And in story design, we always use archetypes, and archetypes are types of characters. I mentioned them briefly before. I'm sure those of you who are interested in drama have heard several iterations of the same basic ideas, and that is that stories require certain types of characters in order to generate the kind of relationships that only drama can address. For example, you'll have a hero and you'll have a villain. You'll have a protagonist, you'll have an antagonist. You might realize with writing that your hero and your antagonist aren't so different from each other. They might be quite similar. They might want the same things, maybe using different cultures or different attitudes, right? You might find the typical archetype of the lover, for example, in a story. All stories have love interests. And here I'm talking about classical drama / movie, Hollywood format kind of thing. Or other archetypes, like, for example, the shapeshifter, a character that is one way and then becomes the other way, a friend that becomes an enemy, or an enemy that becomes a friend, a lover that betrays, as a shapeshifter type of character. Or a shadow character. A shadow character is the kind of character that always brings out the worst in a hero. When the shadow is around, the hero is always confused, thinking bad things. those certain types help, right? They help to organize characters. But fundamentally, I think it's super important to understand that stories generate characters and characters generate stories. Characters are not real people. I'm sorry to break it to you. I know that Spider-Man is cool, but they're not real people. They don't go to the bathroom. They don't pick their nose. They just do what the story wants them to do. And I think for a lot of young writers, letting go of the personal and discovering the dramatic character is an important moment in developing as a storyteller. That even though you have a lot of personal ideas, you have to give them away to the world of the characters. I know you went to the Fernando Pessoa Institute, Marco, right?
Yes.
And when
I did.
when I used to study Fernando Pessoa and his multiple identities, I was always fascinated by how he could be so many people at once.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's such a character. Yes, he was. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this come to again to the good side on the bad side and the bad side on the good side, which is also important, right? Because everybody has this bad side, the dark side, and the bright side.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about opposites, because one of the fundamental backbones of storytelling is the interaction of opposites, is the play between polarities, right? The sun, the moon, the hot, the cold, the happy, the unhappy, the good-looking, the ugly, the young, the old, the opposition between desires and places and people is key to life, but in particular to storytelling, because storytelling sketches a few things kind of quick. So for me, the metaphor that works the best, or one of the metaphors I like to use the most, is that of the coin, flipping a coin. Because if you flip a coin, you might want heads, you might want tails, and you might get some of each. But if you flip a coin 1,000 times, on the average, you'll get about half of each. So basically, there is really, it's hard to decide between day and night and between good and evil. Because the only interesting thing about them, because they're both way too extreme. I mean, paradise is boring and cold, and hell is very interesting, but a bit hot and smelly. The only thing that's interesting about opposites is the transition between the opposites. So, between day and night, the most beautiful part for me, especially living in Scandinavia and having beautiful colors in the sky, is the transition between day and night. In the morning, when the sun rises, you have a spectacle of light. And in the evening, you have these wonderful sunsets, right? And the transition between good and bad is equally fascinating. To watch somebody transform as a person in the moment that they make decisions that change their lives. This is the beautiful revelations that drama can give us, right? So flipping the coin, has that power of that, of sort of the metaphor of having these opposition, but the storyteller in a way is a kind of illusionist, like a magician. He has to flip the coin. He has to keep flipping the coin, because if the coin is flipping in the air and it keeps turning, then all possibilities are still open. Then all opportunity is still available before the coin drops, while the coin is in the air. And the cinema is like that too. You have they probably thought it was going to be shorter.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just to close, is Film is also like this. In the old days, before digital film, you have film going through the sprocket hole, going through the holes of the projector, and there is a flicker. It's on and off and on and off, and the illusion of the cinema is that it's a continuous flow, but it's really just a sequence of images. So that the film is never really moving. It's just a sequence of stills that go so fast that your eye can't tell the difference. So the magic of the medium is also the magic of the message. The storytelling itself is a bit of an illusion.
Well, it's a nice way to close the conversation today, because we will have another two more episodes, right? So if you are watching us, please stay tuned. Now I will announce soon the next episode, so stay tuned. Danny, I have this moment when my guests share some suggestions, okay? A professional, which you recommend, a book, a habit, which should be healthy and legal, a tool, a movie, and a TV series. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me put this video I made.
Sure.
There we go.
Now we're pros.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to share with us your suggestions, it will be great.
But you have to give me the questions one by one.
Okay. A professional.
What does that mean? A job, you mean?
A kind of a shout out. Someone you recommend for us to follow, to know a little bit more, for instance, about storytelling.
Yeah. So I think you should check out a website called 12-Minute Conversations, hosted by Angel Jones. Angel Jones is a fantastic journalist from the Caribbean, from Trinidad and Tobago Islands. And he has traveled all across America and interviewed thousands of people and produced these wonderful audio interviews that are 12-minute storytelling examples.
Oh, great.
And the website is 12-Minute Conversations. And
Perfect.
Angel Jones.
Perfect. A book.
A book. I think you should read this book that I mentioned, Talking to Strangers by...
Yeah, I have it. I already have it, yes.
Yeah, by...
Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell. It's a book that will, speak to the detective in you, because there's a lot of court cases that are looked at through the eye of, misunderstanding appearance of people.
Perfect. And now a habit.
A habit is to play your instrument 10 minutes a day, even if you just whistle, or any old instrument you used to play as a kid, pull it out and play it 10 minutes a day.
Oh, great. A tool.
A tool, okay, this one here.
Okay.
This tool here is an old 90-degree maker for woodcutters, because I think people don't remember, or are often not reminded of the fact that nothing on Earth is 90 degrees. And there are no straight lines on this planet except made by humans. There's not a single straight line and not a single 90-degree angle. And we used this tool to make them.
Really good. A movie?
A movie, I would recommend 1995 Cannes Festival winner Underground by Emir Kusturica.
Oh, I love him. It's amazing. I've seen this movie. Which one was White Cat, Black Cat? Mm. And for me, it was amazing. My God, it's so.
Yeah. But if you Have you seen Underground?
Yeah. Absolutely.
A lot of people haven't. I remember in Los Angeles, I took a bunch of directors and writers that I knew to a one night screening of this film, and they came back. You know, they were also taken.
Yeah,
It's well worth it.
absolutely. And TV series, TV show.
The TV show right now, I'm watching the end of Ozark. Everybody knows Ozark.
Yeah, I don't. So, you made my day.
Oh, watch it, watch it. It's what to do if you have $8 million in your pocket that you got from a mafia boss and you have to recycle it without anybody finding out.
Okay, amazing. Great.
That's it.
So, Daniel, we came to an end. How can people find you on internet? I'm gonna share with people what you sent me before.
Yeah, do that.
Okay, let me see what it is.
Yeah, I have a kind of a quick sort of one pager, which is that it has links to today and a link to just getting on a 15-minute talk if you just want to talk. The Walk With Me audio stories, my Cinema Head site, and my Scriptonite story app, plus all the social links.
Okay, there's
This is really the only place to start if you want to. Otherwise, you can go to cinemahead.com. That's my studio website.
okay, perfect. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to get into conversations on Twitter or in person. There's a lot of things that I'm working on with companies here in Scandinavia, and also developing film stories with writers in the States. There's even a couple of internships actually up here, even though people don't travel that much. But I'm happy to know you better.
perfect. Well, Daniel, we came to an end, my friend.
We had a dark middle. We had the
yeah,
dark
absolutely. I think we made what we praised, which is important. Kind of storytelling. One day you will be telling to your grandsons, "Look, I had this show, and I got froze. There was a black hole in the middle of the screen, and it was amazing." Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all of us who were watching the show. Thank you, Minto, for stay tuned. It was a pleasure, and we will come back soon. Okay, so stay tuned. Don't forget to follow me and follow Daniel so you can know a little bit more. Okay, and see you in a very short time. Thank you, Daniel. See you soon, my friend. Bye bye.